Hi, it's Peter Cook here, the CEO of Thought Leaders, and welcome to the Intro to Thought Leadership webcast. Thank you so much for taking the time to join us. Before we get into it, I thought I'd quickly let you put a face to the name. So this is the homepage of the Thought Leaders Business School website, and there's our mission, helping clever people be commercially smart. Zooming in, that's me with Matt Church, my friend and partner and the founder of Thought Leaders, and that is me on the left. So now you know who you're talking with. Let's get into it. So if you're here listening to this, I imagine that you're either an expert already and looking to do a better job of commercializing that expertise and to perhaps improve the quality of your thinking, or you're looking for a change in your career to perhaps get into running what we call a thought leader's practice. If you're either of those, you're in the right place. What we're going to cover over the next hour or so is some of the mistakes I've made in this journey, why it took me a decade to get to move past what we call white belt, and hopefully through sharing some of these mistakes you can avoid them. I'm also going to go through a decision framework. I think the best use of our time together here is to not just give you some information, but actually get on the other side of some decisions. So let you actually make the decisions that we think are the five. Don't know why I'm holding up 5 fingers here, like you can see them, but you can imagine me holding up 5 fingers, saying we want to get you on the other side of the 5 critical decisions to running a successful thought leaders practice. And we'll get more into what that is, but essentially a practice is you on your own, where you do the thinking, the selling, and the delivery. It's kind of a newish business model, and one that a lot of people don't know that much about, and it's what our whole world is based on, and something I'm really passionate about. I think it's the coolest thing you can do with your work and in your career, and definitely has been for me. So, as I said, we'll go through these 5 decisions. The third one I think is the critical one, and they're all kind of important, but that's, as you'll see, that's the one where the rubber hits the road. The first one is the one that took me a decade. I was a decade into my practice before I made the first one. So hopefully you can do that a little bit sooner. So as I said, 5 key decisions to running a successful thought leaders practice. And the first decision is this even the game you're playing? Are you playing the practice game, or you're running a business, or getting a job? There's essentially 3 ways that you can make money, earn a living. You can have a job where you're working in somebody else's business or organisation. You can run the business where you own it, or you can run a practice. It's the third option that's often not considered, and we think it's a really good option. It's what we're passionate about. But you first need to be really clear that this is what you're doing, because there are different rules to this game. There are different things that work. And if you're not clear, if you're running a practice but you're not clear, you're going to get well-meaning bad advice from people who play the business game. So people will tell you things like, you've got to stop trading your time for money, which is good advice for the CEO of a business. It's just really bad advice for a thought leader running a practice. What we do is we trade our time for money. We just want to get it to $5,000 to $15,000 a day so we can still make the revenue we want to make in our practice. Or people will say to you, you've got to take your name off the door. You need to call yourself something else, which again, if you're building a business that you need to sell, is really good advice. But if you're running a practice, that's spectacularly bad advice. My practice is petercook.com. People buy me. If they want me to come and speak, it's me. It's my books. The brand that I promote in my practice is myname.com. It's petercook.com. So I actually made this decision without realising it back in 2009. That's me looking a little bit younger and a little bit wilder there on the right with Trish, my wife, and a couple of friends that we made when we were on this resort. And in Bali. It was on the northeast coast of Bali, and we were staying in this beautiful little cottage where we were actually right on the beach, and we were sleeping on a day bed. So there was a day bed sitting on the deck or the veranda of this little cottage, little hut on the beach, and we would actually sleep outside, and then we'd see the sun rising in the morning and the fishing boats coming in, and here's what that looked like. So this is what we would wake up to. It was just amazing, a real little slice of paradise. And we'd gone there, so 2009, for a 1 week holiday. It was 9 days. So I'd been a business coach since 2000, and because I didn't kind of understand this business practice distinction, I had been growing a business. And I felt like, to have integrity, that's what I had to do. I was out coaching businesses in how to grow business, how to apply systems. I was a big fan of Michael Gerber and the E-Myth, and I was helping other business owners implement that and some other things as well. And I thought I needed to grow my business too. So I tried all these different things to grow my business. I had franchised it, spent a lot of money and time franchising the whole thing. I sold 5 franchises, then bought them all back because none of them worked, which was a really expensive lesson. I then contracted coaches and subcontracted coaches. So I had some employed, some subcontractors, had a team of 10 business coaches working the business up and down the east coast of Australia. And the whole thing looked really good. From the outside, it looked quite impressive. But my revenue was never more than what we would say is white belt. So I was never doing more than 100, 120,000 a year income myself. And the insight I had on this holiday, as I said, it was a holiday for 1 week, or 9 days, a weekend either side and a week in the middle, because that was as long as I could be away from the business without the wheels falling off. And this insight I had when we were kind of sitting at this beach watching the sunrise and the fishing boats come in was that when I was at university, I used to get a 2-month holiday every year. And now that I was a successful entrepreneur, and you can't see this, but I'm doing the air quotes, 1 week was all I got. And I thought, there's something really wrong with this picture. And so what I decided was I was going to change my business so that I could come back to Bali for 2 months and that I could run it from Bali. And I didn't realise it at the time, or language it like this, but what I'd actually done was made a decision to go from a business to a practice. And so for the rest of that year, I let all the coaches who were in the business go. I helped my PA find employment somewhere else. When the lease, we're paying $50 grand a year to lease this beautiful office in Fitzroy in Melbourne, and decided when that came up for renewal, I didn't renew it, and got back to just me and my kind of 6 or so favourite clients, and set them all up so they were happy to work over the phone. And then that December, Trish and I went back to Bali for 2 months, for December and January. And I was working with just these half a dozen clients over the phone and was making more money 1 day a week with a laptop and a mobile phone sitting by a pool in Bali than I was working 6 days a week and stressed to my eyeballs in Melbourne. And so the revenue wasn't more, but the amount of money that I was making was more. And I thought to myself, this is better. And also realised that the bit that I loved doing was the doing it. Like in that business, I liked doing the coaching. That was my favourite bit, actually working with clients. It wasn't the HR and the management and Monday morning meetings and all the stuff you will kind of associate with running a business and a bureaucracy. And so I came home after that, and somebody said to me, "Oh, it's a practice. You're running a practice. You've got to go and meet this guy, Matt Church," which I did, and found thought leaders and had this experience. this is actually a thing. Like, I felt a little bit like I was cheating, but realised, oh no, this is a whole legitimate thing, and there's a model for doing it, and there are all these people who are doing it, and I felt like joining the Thought Leaders tribe, that I was coming home. I had this experience, and a lot of people have shared it's the same for them, that I had found my people, and I'd been in business networks, and I'd been in coaching networks, and lots of other communities, but never really felt like I was at home until I came across the Thought Leaders community. And so this decision of, are you running a practice or are you running a business, is critical. And here are some of the distinctions. So a business is obviously scalable. Business will have a large team, whereas a practice is a small team. A practice is cash flow funded. You shouldn't have any startup cost, whereas a business will require investment. The practice is based around you and your expertise. Without the thought leader, there is no practice. So it has no value outside the founder and can't be sold. Whereas a business, the idea is you create the systems, you have other people run the systems, and you can sell the business. And this can be a criticism of a practice, is that you can't sell it. I can't sell petercook.com unless I find somebody else called Peter Cook who wants to take over. And so what we need to do is make sure that we're taking money out of the practice and investing it outside. And the high profit margin lets us do that. In business, 20% is typically a really good profit margin. In some industries, you would get much less than that. Whereas in a practice, we want that to be our cost base. So we're expecting 20 to 30% of turnover to be what the expenses of the business are, and then 70 to 80% is what you take home. And finally, a practice is much more agile and responsive. We can do things much quicker, get to market much quicker typically than we can in a business. It is possible to run both concurrently. So you can think of Branson, who has the Virgin business and the Richard Branson practice. And his practice he does 50 keynotes a year at about 75 grand a pop, puts out a book every couple of years, and you can pay $25,000 to go and get mentoring on Necker Island, which he does 4 times a year. And if you add all of that up, it's about $9 million that Richard Branson makes in his practice, completely separate to the Virgin business, which obviously you can't live off, but it's a start. And I've got my accountant, actually, Jason Cunningham, who's much closer to home, runs a successful accounting business. I think there's over 50 professionals who work in the firm, turns over close to $10 million. But the best marketing for the business, financial services business, is the Jason Cunningham practice. So he's written a couple of books, he speaks at conferences, he's on the radio every week in Melbourne, he's on one of the lifestyle TV shows, and people see him speak, they come across him, get mentored from him, and then they want him to be their accountant. And of course, he does, and he will do the strategic piece up front, but then of course it's not him doing the tax returns. So his practice, which is around Blue Belt, turns over $500,000, give or take, is kind of the rainmaker for the business. So that's possible too. And when people say, can you do both? We say, absolutely, just don't start them at the same time. So either if you have your business up and running, then there's a point where it kind of doesn't need you, and then that's a good point to actually launch a practice. Or once your practice is beyond black belt, one of the options is to flip it into a business, which we talk about. So the first decision is this the game you're playing? Are you running a practice now or in the future? And if so, this is what this whole webcast is about, so fabulous, stick around. If not, then maybe the rest of it's for you, isn't for you, and I promise I won't be offended if you decide, no, this isn't the game for me, and move on. Second decision, if you are running a practice, you can either do it with your thought leadership or with somebody else's. So there are plenty of people running practices using other people's stuff. And if you go into a bookshop, or if you can still find a bookshop, or more typically these days go on Amazon. If you're a leadership expert and you coach or consult around leadership and you put leadership into Amazon, you'll find 10,000 books. And it can be quite daunting to think, what have I possibly got to add to this? And this little voice inside our head that says, I'm not good enough, will possibly come up and get in the way. And what we want to realise is that we don't need to come up with something terminally unique. Being a thought leader is a little bit like doing a PhD. All we're trying to do is extend the body of knowledge in a particular domain a little bit in one direction, and also bring it together. This is the guy, Joel Kurtzman, who actually coined the phrase thought leader. And he did this, I think in 94. He's editor of a magazine, a business magazine. And so this idea of being a thought leader has been around for quite a long time, although recently it's got a lot more traction. And Matt Church founded the company Thought Leaders in 2000. So this business that I now run with Matt has been around for quite a while. And we say that what your job is as a thought leader is not knowledge. It's not more information. Maybe, when we were kids, if you're of a similar vintage than me, an expert was somebody who had the knowledge. So you went to a doctor, you said, these are my symptoms, and the doctor was the one who could then say, well, I know those symptoms mean this. We don't need a doctor for that anymore. It's possible for any of us very quickly to find out what the symptoms mean. It's just, how do we make sense of all the information that's out there? So your job as a thought leader is to make your work relevant, meaningful, and engaging, to provide relevance, meaning, and engagement in the topic. And a big part of that is being across the whole domain and finding the bits that are meaningful for your audience, that will make a difference, that will help solve your people's problems. So it doesn't mean you need to come up with a whole new thing. Often it's just bringing different things together and then adding your take on it. And for me, the litmus test on this is, do you have a book in you? So one of the deliverables in Thought Leaders Business School is you write a book. And I'm not sure how this is going to go with the webcast streaming, but here are a collection of the books from graduates of the program. And one of the things that's really cool about the program is it normalises this idea of writing a book. So some of the people who come in thinking perhaps that's something someone else does, and within a year everybody has to write a book, and we have this little ceremony where you get to put your book on the bookshelf, which is really cool. And so for me, this is a good test, is, do you have a book in you? Is your future, is this on your bucket list? Can you see a book at some point in your future? And if you do, then this is definitely, you should run your practice around your thought leadership. The big advantage of doing this, well, there's a couple. One is, personally, it's your voice. If you have something to say, then this is how to get it into the world. This is how to make the difference with it. But also commercially, it's much smarter to be running a practice around your thought leadership than someone else's. So I could become a Myers-Briggs accredited trainer and use that IP, or an LSI coach, or a Getting Things Done facilitator. There's a whole thousands of different things that I could get accredited in, and I could teach somebody else's stuff. But the problem with that is it puts a cap on what I can charge. If I'm a Myers-Briggs trainer, here in Australia, $3,000 a day is about the most I can charge. and it doesn't matter how good I am unless I'm Myers or Briggs. That's the cap that the market places on what a Myers-Briggs trainer can charge. However, if it's my stuff, then the conversation becomes about value rather than about a commodity. If I'm just an executive coach, people need to know how to buy executive coaching. They'll have panels, they'll have standard procedures, they'll have standard pricing. But if I am the implementation coach and I am uniquely positioned to solve the particular problem that somebody has, then the conversation doesn't become about what's a commodity pricing. It becomes about what's the value of solving that problem. And that's a much better conversation to be having. Similar, people ask, does it have to be a book? And why is it that we make this a deliverable of the program? And it's a really good question, because we want to get our thought leadership out in a whole bunch of different mediums. We want to be having newsletters and writing white papers and potentially doing podcasts and using video and have a great website, etc. But there's still something about a book in our culture that has more gravitas than any of the other things. And we have a lot of PhDs, people who have spent 3, 5, 7 years, written $100,000 peer-reviewed theses, published in journals, that say that their book is better positioning than their PhD, even though the book potentially is 25,000 words and took 90 days to write. So there's still, in our culture, there's something about a book that still equates to being an expert. And there's a lot of historical reasons for that maybe don't make sense anymore, but they're still around. And I know for sure that sending somebody a book that you wrote has a much bigger impact than sending them a white paper or sending them a brochure. Similarly, if you're a speaker, if you've written the book, you're more likely to get booked to speak on that topic, and you can charge more than a speaker without a book on the topic. So, second decision, your thought leadership. Are you going to run your practice as a thought leader or using somebody else's IP? And my guess is that, given you're here at a introduction to thought leaders webcast, that probably that's a yes, and I reckon that's definitely the way to go. So the third decision, and for me this is really where the rubber hits the road, is are you going for black belt? So if you are running a practice as a thought leader, are you aiming for what we use this black belt metaphor for as successful thought leaders practice? So 3 elements to what we say goes into a black belt practice or a successful practice. And the first is revenue. So $500,000 to $1.5 million a year, working 50 to 200 days with 1 or maybe 2 support staff. There's also lifestyle. A successful practice is one where you get to do work you love with people you like the way you want. And because this is exertion income, we're not talking about how to make money in your pajamas. We're not talking about passive revenue, passive income streams. We're not definitely talking about get rich quick. We're saying do great work that makes a difference and get well paid for it, but make no mistake, this is work. And we want to sustain this for a decade. So this really needs to be a labour of love. It needs to be something you're passionate about. And finally, that a successful practice is one where you get to leave a legacy, where you get to make the contribution you were born to make. So they're the 3 elements of what we say is a successful practice. It's revenue, $500,000 to $1.5 million, working 50 to 200 days with 1 or 2 support staff, lifestyle, doing work you love with people you like the way you want, and legacy, making the difference you're born to make, making whatever contribution you want to make to your world and your community and to the planet. And the reason I say this is where the rubber hits the road, for me, this is a courageous decision. It's not like, at one level you go, well, of course I want all of that. Who wouldn't want to make good money, lead a great life, and make a difference? But to say that you're going for it even before you know how you're going to do it is risky. And you need to be all in. If this is the game you're playing, then you can't be kind of 80% in. You can't be dipping your toe in the water. If you're serious about this, it means you're all in and there's a risk. Then what if it doesn't work? What if I commit myself fully and then I come up short? And so this isn't a decision that I'd suggest you take lightly. And one of the extraordinary things about being in business school is there are 150 students who have all made this decision. Actually, all the decisions we're talking about is the requirement to join business school is that you have to be obviously running a practice as a thought leader. But everybody in the room is going for black belt. Everybody's aiming for these three things, which makes it an extraordinary community. And it has its own kind of gravity or pull. It moves, it helps. The fact that everybody's doing it helps you create the mindset and the actions that make it happen. So when I first saw this white belt to black belt ladder was when I first did the 2-day thought leadership course with Matt Church back in, that would have been 2010. And it completely did my head in. The idea of turning over $60,000 a month, just me, when I did the numbers and how much I would have to charge for a day or an hour, and thought about $10,000 days and $1,000 an hour and numbers like that, thought there is no way. What could I would have been happy. I'd been running at white belt for a decade. So my business coaching business, even though the revenue grew, what I was making wasn't more than white belt, as I said earlier, for 10 years. And I would have been happy to go to yellow belt. If I could have got to $240,000, I would have been all good with that. And yet there was another part of me that was saying, well, why not? I was looking around and seeing all these other black belts in the community and thinking, well, if they can do it, why not me? And I thought, they're smart, but I'm smart, and they seem to be working hard. But when I looked at it, was actually working a lot harder for a lot of the time I'd been at white belt than some of these black belts were to get to black belt or to maintain black belt. And I figured I'm going to be playing a game anyway. Why not play the black belt game? There's a couple of other things that were going on in the background at this time as well. Trish was trying to get pregnant. Trish and I were trying to get pregnant, and it hadn't been working. So we'd been trying for a while to have a baby, and it was this kind of strange period where everyone around us was getting pregnant and popping out babies. Both my younger brothers had their first kids, and all our friends were starting families, and it wasn't happening for us. And Trish had a really high profile executive role. She'd come out of consulting, gone into industry, had this really kind of high level role, but really stressful. And so she quit her job to bring down her stress levels and to give us a better chance of having a family. And unfortunately, while she wasn't stressed about work anymore, she was now stressed about my kind of erratic, lumpy revenue. And she said that she didn't feel safe. She looked at the money that I was bringing in and didn't feel at one level didn't think, wasn't confident that would support a family. And at a more kind of core level, she just didn't feel safe, which was hard for me to hear, but made me think, all right, it's time to get serious about making some money. And my business coaching business that I'd been running for a decade was called Love Your Business, and it was all about making a difference in the world, putting more love into business, helping business owners love their business more so that their team would, so that customers would, who would spend more money. And It's like a lovely idea and kind of my legacy idea, but no one was buying it. It was the wrong message for that market. It wasn't working, or hadn't worked a little bit, but definitely hadn't taken off. And so I thought to myself, all right, I'm gonna stop saving the world for a little bit. I'm going to let the world look after itself. I'm going to look after my family and focus on making some money. And so this kind of came at the perfect time. And I asked Matt, who's the quickest? What's the quickest somebody's gone white belt to black belt? And Matt told me about this guy, Peter Sheehan, who I later interviewed for our green book. And asked him, and Matt said he did it in 14 months. And occasionally I'm just a little bit competitive. So I said, all right, I'm going to do it in 12 months. And to keep myself honest, I'm going to write a blog about it. And so this was on a Friday, the next Monday I started my blog, White Belt to Black Belt, in 365 days. And hadn't really thought it through that at one level I was like, hey, this will hold myself accountable in the community. Also found out my family was reading it, my clients were reading it, went kind of broader than I anticipated when I had the idea. But what I would do is each week I would blog about how I was going on this journey. And then each month I would also report on my revenue for the month. So I was like being radically transparent about the financials of my practice, which turned out to be a really cool thing. There was lots of people who really got on board. My clients loved the idea of it. They loved being part of it. And in my second month, I said, just invoiced $23,000 for the month. I had a yellow belt month. The next month, on the last day of the month, I made a sale that got me to a green belt month, $30,000 for a month. And then 125 days later, I had my first black belt month. Maintained that to do black belt revenue, $720,000 after 10 months. And then on the second last day of our financial year, the 29th of June, I passed $1 million for the financial year in revenue and have maintained that ever since. So 10 years at white belt to be an overnight success, but then moved very quickly up the ladder when I committed to it completely. And had the advantage of 10 years of building up IP and networks and stuff, so I could go quickly when I did. And some good things happened. It probably took me 2 years to recalibrate. For the first 2 years I was at black belt, I kept feeling like someone was about to tap me on the shoulder and say, Pete, you've stepped into somebody else's life. This isn't you. You're meant to be back over there. And then after 2 years at black belt, I kind of settled and went, okay, this is my new. It's like my set point had adjusted. That it became my normal. Trish started to feel safer. We now have 2 beautiful little girls, Scarlett and Emily, and they're both IVF babies. So definitely a lot of credit goes to the science and to the people we had around us helping us. But also I think at some level, Trish feeling safer definitely enabled that. And the biggest paradox, I guess, is I now get to make a much bigger difference in the world running a black belt practice than I ever did kind of struggling to save the world at white belt. This is Corinne Armour. I won't show the video, but when I do this as a live workshop, I show Corinne. She's one of our faculty who took a different approach. When she came in, was the primary caregiver in her family as well as being the sole provider. So she had only essentially school hours plus a little bit of time when her kids went to bed to run her practice. And so she kind of prorated it in her head and said, well, if the normal journey is 3 years to black belt, and this is the time I've got, I'm going to give myself 5 years. And so she set herself a target of getting to black belt in 5 years and hit it like almost within the month. It was quite bizarre, and runs a black belt practice but has grown it and still does it really around her family and being a mum at the same time. And so for me, a better question than how do you get to black belt quickly, which is nice, particularly if you've had a long time leading up to it, is how do you do it sustainably? And typically, as I said, it's a 3-year journey to black belt is what we see. So this decision going for black belt, as I said, this is the key one. And what I think you need to overcome on this journey is 3 different things. We all have a voice inside our head that says, I'm not good enough. And to some degree, to even say I'm a thought leader, I'm an expert in this, I am the person to go to if you're this type of person with this sort of problem wanting this sort of result. You have to get over that a little bit. I think we also have another voice inside our head that says, I don't deserve it. And all of us, at some level, are dysfunctional around money. So we're not all the same around these, but I think to a greater or lesser extent, we have all 3 of these going on. A voice that says I'm not good enough, another one that says I don't deserve it, and dysfunctionality around money. And one of the amazing things about this journey to black belt is that you have to overcome all of those to get there. And we're very explicit in saying that this isn't a personal development program. So when this voice that says I'm not good enough comes up, we don't process it. We don't sit down and say, so tell me about your childhood and what didn't you get from your parents. And we say, all right, cool, got it. We all have that. Now go out and sell something and see what it feels like on the other side. But while it's not a personal development program, it is definitely a personal growth journey. And everybody who comes through this reports on that, and they kind of laugh at us when we say it's not personal development, because we definitely will grow in this journey. And to commit to that, to actually say, yeah, I'm going for this, even though I don't know how I'm going to get there, means that you're deciding to take on these voices and these demons and this dysfunctionality, and in a way take yourself on. It's a commitment to your own growth, because you'll be a different person when you get there than you are right now. So that is our 3rd decision. My slide deck here is from we do this as a workshop too. So if we were together in a room, now is the time we would go and get a coffee. If you're very quick, you can grab yourself a coffee, but I'm trusting that you looked after yourself before you got started. So let's move on to our 4th decision, and that is, are you using the cluster strategy? So we only teach one thing. We only use one strategy, and this is the cluster strategy. So a cluster is essentially an offer you take to market. And a mistake that a lot of people make is to just pick one. They go really hard at their first cluster. What I did. So my first cluster, I should say what a cluster is. So it's a combination of a message, a domain of expertise, into a market, someone who's going to buy it, who will value it, with a delivery method. And the 6 we use are either speaker, author, trainer, mentor, facilitator, or coach. So my cluster that I mentioned that I started my practice with was business coaching. The message was love your business. The market was small business owners, and the method was coaching. So that was a cluster. And how we get to black belt is by launching lots of clusters. It's not by getting one cluster to be really successful. It's by having lots of clusters, some of which work, some of which don't. And the ones that do, we want them to get to 10,000 a month. So that's what we say is a successful cluster. And if I'd known this methodology when I started back in 2000, it would have saved me a world of pain, because I would have, my coaching business, like I started when I was very kind of young and arrogant and ignorant. The arrogance of youth, I guess. I think it was 27 when I started, and I was working as a consultant at Accenture. I didn't like the look of the future of being a partner and still being in the firm in 10 years, and could see how it could get more and more addictive the more money you made there. And so I left and thought, and I saw a business coach to see what kind of business I could do. And then I thought, that actually looks like a pretty good job. I've never run a business and I've never been a coach, but as I said, with the arrogance and ignorance of youth, I said, I'll give that a crack. And I had a tough first year. It took a while. This was also before business coaching was really a thing, so a lot of people hadn't even heard of it when I said I was a business coach. But then my second year went much better, and I got to white belt. I was doing $10,000 a month. And if I'd known the cluster strategy then, I would have gone, great, let's lock that down, and what's my next cluster? What's the next thing I'm going to do? Instead, I spent 10 years trying to grow that cluster, if you like, that offer. So we start this with you. You have a big word that says, and this is when you go through the curriculum I mentioned, you start however you work with us, the starting point is the online curriculum. So this flipped classroom idea that you sit down, you watch a whole bunch of kind of cutting edge video that's best practice pedagogy, best practice learning, where you get to learn the methodology thoroughly at your pace. And where we start with is you, and we're going to come up with a big word that sits above everything you do, that captures kind of your essence and your wisdom, and that everything else will sit under. And then we're going to have between 3 and 9 folders of expertise that sit under that. So for me, my big word is implement. Everything I do is through this filter of implementation. When Matt and I come together and teach Thought Leaders Business School, Matt's much more about inspiration, and I'm much more about implementation. And so it's a really beautiful partnership and a nice complementary synergy. But then under that, I have folders of expertise. I'm an expert in small business, in sales, in thought leadership, in innovation, and so on. And that's what we're going to come up with for you you'll come up with as you go through the curriculum, is what are your different domains of expertise. And we want at least 3 to start with. Behind each of these domains of expertise, you're going to do what we call a commercial PhD. Capture your intellectual property using this tool called a pink sheet that essentially will capture and flesh out your thinking. And we say that eventually in each one of these domains, you want 52 unique ideas fleshed out in pink sheets. Then we're going to come up with 20 possible clusters. 20 things that you could do, 20 different ways that you could make money. And it's not that hard to do, because every time you change just one of those, that's a new cluster. So for example, my Love Your Business, Small Businesses coaching is a cluster. If I said, all right, let me do Love Your Business to mechanics, I just changed the market, narrowed it down from businesses to mechanics through coaching, that would be another cluster. Or I could say, I'm going to run a workshop. It's Love Your Business, Small Businesses Training. And that's another possible cluster. So you'll come up with 20 possible clusters. And once we've done that, it just becomes about sequencing. And having 20 also lets us be lighter. Our expectation is that half of them will fail. So we want them within 3 months to get to 10,000 a month. That's kind of the game plan, and we launch 4 a year. So year 1, what we do kind of, as I said, through the curriculum, is pick the first 4. And what we want is the ones that are going to be the easiest to get to 10,000 a month. So we're not looking for what's going to make you the happiest, what's going to make your mother proud, the thing that you think you were put on the planet to do. We'll get to all of those, but where we'll start is what is the easiest to get to 10,000 a month, and pick the first 4. Over the year, we expect 2 of them to succeed and 2 of them to fail, which means at the end of the year, you should be making 20,000 a month more than you were at the start of the year. Same thing again and again. Hence, after 3 years, you've launched 12 clusters. You expect half of them to succeed and half of them to fail. Hence, 6 clusters that are still successful at the end of the year, 3 years, doing $10,000 a month each, $60,000 a month. That is a black belt practice. So that is essentially the game plan for going from white belt to black belt. And this is, as I said, this is the only strategy that we teach. We obviously go very deep into all of these areas. We drill down into message, into how to capture IP, into how to go to market. A good third of the curriculum is how do you sell yourself as a thought leader, and it's an even bigger percentage of that in terms of the focus in business school, because it's all about getting from white belt to black belt. And then how do you be competent enough, how do you get good enough at the 6 delivery methods: speaking, authoring, training, mentoring, facilitating and coaching, to be able to deliver your expertise. So there's a lot that sits behind it, but this is the only thing we teach, and this is the strategy that we recommend for getting to black belt. So the decision is, if you're running a practice as a thought leader and going for black belt, is this the strategy that you're going to use?
So, decision number 5 is, do you want to play the game with us? Do you want to become part of the Thought Leaders community, check out our programs, and get our help on this journey from white belt to black belt and beyond? This is what the whole journey looks like. So if you want to spend the next decade in our world, this is the whole thing. I just want to unpack this a little bit, but then come back to the starting point, so which is the foundation program. And then at the end, I'll share a special offer that we have as part of this webcast where you can get started for $1. So talk you through the whole thing, and then at the end, I'm going to ask you for $1 if you want to get started. Foundation program is our starting point, and this is 3 months to 12 months where you learn our curriculum, get at least to white belt, and get ready for business school. Business School is our flagship program, Thought Leaders Business School. It's typically 3 years to get from white belt to black belt. And the whole job, as you can see, the whole job here at Business School is to get white belt to black belt. And then once you graduate from Business School, we have our Leadership Academy, our graduate program. All our faculty are part of this. Our faculty of Business School are black belt. And beyond black belt, the aim is to achieve financial freedom from your practice. But that's probably getting a bit ahead of ourselves for now. So let's talk about Business School. This is Cole Fink. He'll introduce himself, sharing a little bit about what Business School looks like, and then I'll go on to unpack a bit more about that and then come back to the foundation program.
Hey, I'm Cole Fink, Head of Engagement for Thought Leaders, and in this video I just want to give you a bit of a sense of what your experience might be like when you sign up for Thought Leaders Business School. So the journey typically kicks off 3 to 6 months before your first immersion. You'll sign up for the program, pay your deposit, and take a look at the 4 intake dates throughout the year and pick the one that works out best for you. It would be a mistake to think that the program begins on day 1 of immersion, because we operate via the flipped classroom, and you're going to come to immersion fully prepared and having done a lot of pre-work. So what that means is, as soon as you sign up for the program, you get immediate access to the curriculum, which is our online learning platform, which delivers all the information you need to become conversant in the Thought Leaders methodology. Going through the curriculum gives you the opportunity to get deeply, deeply embedded in the Thought Leaders methodology and come to your first immersion fully prepared to make the most of that opportunity. With the onboarding process complete, you are ready for your first immersion. What an exciting moment. Let's flick to a video now of Matt Church walking in on day 1 of a Thought Leaders Business School immersion.
So we're coming into the room, there's like 150 students in business school, that's our cap, and they sit here in a collaborative environment, chatting and sharing their information. But just check out the number of people. This is early on day 1. The newbies have just had a special session, we'd love you to be in that one day, where they've just been told to stay cool, just stay relaxed. because this program is different. You've heard us talk a lot about flipping, and for people of our age, with respect, we're not used to learning like that. And so what we're used to doing is sit down, be quiet, told, memorise it and regurgitate it in an exam. But that's not at all useful for someone who's trying to actually transform. So the whole immersion is like if you wanted to learn a language, what would you do? You do 6 years of French at school and you can't speak French, right? Remember? But if you went to France for 3 months, I reckon you'd nail it and you'd have conversational French down. So that's what this is about. So my great hope is I get to see you live at an immersion like this one day soon.
Every business school immersion is different and all of them are simply amazing. It's really hard to describe what it's like to be in a room of such an incredible group of people with this diversity of ideas, experience, expertise and insight to be shared. There's something for everybody and you just never quite know what you're going to take away from it. One of the toughest aspects of running a solopreneurial business is the fact that you're by yourself. And so one of the most valuable aspects of the Thought Leaders Business School program is the tribe of people that are joining you on this journey. They're playing the same game, so they understand what it's like to be running a business like yours. And there's this incredible generosity that exists in this tribe, a group of people willing to help you and give to you without expectation. Anytime you've got a question, you can jump on Thought Leaders Central, put that question out there and see what results come back. It's amazing how much time you can save and how many shortcuts you can take and mistakes you can avoid when you've got a group of people around you who are committed to your success. There are thought leaders who describe finding this tribe as like finding home. So if you feel like you might have just found your home, we would love to see you in the room someday soon.
Excellent. Thank you, Cole. Obviously, thank you, Cole, for the video. And glad that worked for the webcast. Here are our faculty at the time of at current time. Amazing. All you need to be black belt to be part of faculty, and these are people who have been through the program, graduated, and hung around to help. And so, if you end up as part of Thought Leaders Business School, you'll be working with these amazing people. Your job throughout the first 12 months of business school is to complete the foundation program, which is the onboarding process. And this is what I'll talk about in a minute, which is essentially learn the curriculum. You create 101 pink sheets during the year, 101 distinct ideas that are fleshed out using our methodology, launch a cluster every quarter, as we talked about earlier, write one book, and update your dashboard and action plan each week. So, what are the results? One of the cool things about having this dashboard is we get to see for every student, for each of their clusters, how many approaches they've made, how many meetings they've had, how many sales they've made, and what delivery they've done. So we can track revenue and the journey from white belt to black belt across the whole curriculum and average it out, and know exactly what are the results that people are achieving in business school. So for the first year of business school, our ambition is 2 belts. As we talked about, launching 4 clusters, expecting 2 to fail and 2 to succeed, and 2 successful clusters adding $10,000 a month each to your practice is obviously an extra $20,000 a month in your practice. It's called an ambition, and I think that's quite ambitious. Particularly people come in typically at white belt at the start of business school, so we're talking about tripling the revenue of a practice. And there would obviously be some kind of distribution around that. My expectation was more like it was going to be 1 belt when we launched, and I think that's a successful year. If you're doing $10,000 a month more, an extra $120,000 a year ongoingly after 1 year in the program, I think that's a good year, and that's kind of what we anticipated would happen. The actual result has been better than both the expectation and the ambition. And what we see when we look at somebody's best quarter in their first 12 months in business school is an average increase of over 2.8 belts, or over $28,000 a month in revenue, which is quite extraordinary. I don't know of another program in the world that has these results. And if you're a statistician or a mathematician like myself, you're looking at that and go, okay, that's nice, but statistics lie and tell me what the distribution looks like. And So what we see when we look at how that spreads out is our average there, and 21% under a belt, so almost Pareto's principle, 20% there. We've got then between 1 and 2 belts, the bulk of the program, another 34%, all the way up to 12% who essentially go white belt to black belt in a year. So a pretty even distribution across there. Part of how these results are so good, one of the contributing factors is that you need to get yourself to white belt before your first immersion. So within the foundation program, if you're starting at 0, the foundation program's job is to get you to white belt, and if that doesn't happen, then you don't start business school. And so in a way, that skews these results in our favour. It means that only the people who already got to white belt form part of this sample, which increases it. But regardless of that, if you get into business school, these are the results you can expect, which are, as I said, quite extraordinary. It's $27,500, including GST, for the program. And let's have a quick look at what some of the students say, and then we'll come back to the foundation program.
What just happened? I got my first blue belt presentation. What an honour. All of the hard work, the support, the mentoring, the coaches, the faculty, it all adds up to one moment, and that's right now.
This book I wrote in 88 days. Matt asked us to stand up and declare what we're going to achieve, and the power of the community helped me be focused and put something out there, and the amount of positive reinforcement enabled me to get this book, 27,000 words, out in 88 days.
Progress has been really good, and I'm really feeling busy. Like, I'm really turning work around quickly and getting that sense of what you can do, and realising for the first time that the upper levels are possible.
I have actually walked up the ladder, white, yellow, green and now blue, so that alone's been the motivator, that each time you come back you've got that next ladder up.
This already feels like my tribe. I'm so excited to have found everybody that I feel like I can connect with and be me with. I'm getting a bit teary because it can be a bit lonely out there running your own business. These people are just so generous and so inspiring and also determined, and that's what I aspire to being a part of.
As soon as I heard Matt and Pete describe the program, I knew that that's exactly what I needed to take me to where I wanted to be. The big thing that's changed for me has been my confidence in my own thought leadership, my confidence in the value that I'm able to offer to other people.
I came in as a green belt, loosely green belt, I guess, and I've grown it to a black belt practice now. Part of me was dreading it. I thought, oh no, they're gonna give me this belt. They're gonna have to shake hands and do high fives, but it's freaking cool. Whichever way you twist it, right, it's just bloody cool. I loved it, of course. Who doesn't?
Yes, I've seen that video lots of times and it always makes me smile, particularly Thomas there at the end. So that's business school, but as I said, foundation is the first step. It's the prerequisite for business school. It's what gets you ready. And this is 3 to 12 months to get you across the curriculum and to at least to white belt. So it has the curriculum online, which we've seen a little bit about, webcasts that we run fortnightly, and group coaching, so you get supported along the journey, access to Thought Leader Central, and that's where we have the curriculum and our community lives, and there's a special space there for everybody in the foundation program, so you kind of get a safe space to ask what might feel like the dumb questions with everyone else who's in the same part of the journey. And you get the scoreboard. So this software that we've built for how do you manage a practice. And for me, I think the most valuable thing about each of the programs is this community of peers on the same journey. So this is an unusual conversation that we're having. And the behaviours and mindsets to be successful in this game are different to what's out there in the world. And I think being in a community of people who are sharing the same intents, who have chosen to run a practice as a thought leader and go for black belt using clusters is priceless. So that's the program. It's $1,500 including GST, which counts towards your business school tuition. So if you go on to do business school, that becomes your deposit. And as I said, we have a special offer that's part of the webcast. So you can get started for $1, and there's a link that should be below here. I think if I press this right, this should show up below here now. And then 3 monthly installments of $500, which I guess makes it $1,501. So you pay $1 now to get started, and then in a month you'll pay another $500 3 times. So yeah, the first one's in a month. And you can withdraw any time in the first month and pay just the $1. So we used to actually get it started for free, but it's amazing you cannot find software that will let you set up a payment, the first payment in a month. There's lots that will let you take a deposit now and then in a month, so we've made it a $1 deposit. So yeah, if you want to get started, this is a way for you to check us out with very low risk, dive into the curriculum, and even at the $1,500, I think that's extraordinary value. So there's either the link below, or you can go there directly, www.tlbusinesschool.com/webcast offer. That's where you'll find that offer. And that brings us to the end of the webcast. Thank you so much again for taking the time to engage, for making it all the way through to the end. I really hope we get to work together in the future, and wish you all the best in your practice and with your thought leadership.